It is amazing at how fast we are moving to an autonomous world. The announcements made recently will absolutely astound you. We'll be going through some of that here in the next over the next hour. Plus, we're going to be talking about the latest threat from Russian hackers.
Oh boy!
And they're not attacking your computer. That's what's interesting about this. So we'll be talking about this about halfway through the hour. You need to stay tuned for this because this is some major news, and we'll talk about how you.
Is this the router thing?
This is the router thing. And it's pretty interesting, and you know, you always think that maybe some of the equipment you have is safe, but I guess we're finding out that it's not. So at the control panel, producer extraordinaire Jim Walsh.
Well, good morning to you, sir.
You have a new haircut.
I know I got them all cut. It's an old vaudeville thing.
That's what I say when I go in. Can you cut my one hair, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, over the weekend, I saw Deadpool 2, which is a fun movie. Definitely not for family friendly.
Right.
Not one for the little kids.
Right.
Teenagers probably okay. And I saw The Avengers. My wife and I are still trying to figure that one out. It's not an unfriendly movie for the family, but just everything goes on 100 miles an hour.
It is 100 miles an hour.
And they just leave you hanging right at the end. I'm assuming it's a cliffhanger that they're going to resolve.
Well, of course. Of course.
Okay.
So, did you enjoy both movies?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
We laughed a lot at Deadpool. We thought Deadpool was hilarious.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And at the other microphone, Rockin' Dave Blair.
Rockin' Dave.
Hey.
You were at the movies as well?
I took my grandson. I'm glad I didn't go to the Deadpool with my grandson.
Yeah,
probably
that's
probably a good idea.
You know, even though he's 13.
Yeah.
You know, but we went to Drift, which is, you know, I love true stories.
Yeah.
I really do. It's like reading nonfiction.
Yeah.
I really like nonfiction.
Sure.
I can put myself in that person's space, maybe.
Well, I didn't get to the movies, but I did watch the Eagles documentary. The music group, the Eagles, over the weekend on Netflix. That was good, too. You know, actually, it's two parts that they blended into one. So it was, you know, their first era from the 70s into the early 80s, and then, of course, they got back together in 94.
Yeah.
It's just amazing, you know. They broke up in 81, I think it was.
Right.
And, of course, they were long hair, bearded, whatever else, right? When they come back in 94, they're all clean cut.
Yeah, they're all
you know,
yuppies.
it's interesting how people transform like that.
Did they get into what is it about the Eagles that people love to hate that band?
I don't know.
There are people out there who just think the Eagles are just the epitome of evil for some reason. I don't know why.
I've never heard that, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Some people just hate them with a purple passion. I'm not one of them. I'm not among them. But there are people who hate the Eagles. Just can't stand them.
But isn't that case in a lot of bands? Either you like them or you don't like them.
I suppose.
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe it's just the commercial success. I mean, they are a very commercial band.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have an issue with that.
Yeah. You know, and I think they kind of designed themselves to be around that, too.
Well, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it was not... Linda Ronstadt, believe it or not, had a lot to do with them getting together.
That's right.
I did not know that.
Oh.
So I thought it was interesting. But anyway.
Also, on the TV, it was 1968. And recapping all the stuff that happened in 1968.
Oh, that's right, because we're 50 years ago.
We're 50 years
Robert
ago.
Kennedy.
That's
yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Happened tomorrow.
It was a whole thing, you know, about this busboy.
Yeah.
That he had befriended the night before, Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
And he's the one that kind of held Robert Kennedy on his lap after he got shot.
Wow. I saw that picture.
And he recapped that in a news article. It was pretty interesting.
You know, you think about the problems we have in our country now.
Yeah.
But we really were in some very traumatic scenarios back in the 60s, weren't we?
Well, I remember when that happened. I was 12 years old. But, you know, even among kids, there was just this horrible sense of, well, I guess we all kind of saw this coming, didn't we? It's terrible.
Yeah, it was a terrible time for our country. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
so.
Vietnam War and racial discrimination and all of that going on.
We do have a story about the Robert Kennedy anniversary on the website for the station.
Oh, great.
SuperTalk 1270.
And yes, tomorrow you said...
He did visit Bismarck at least one occasion.
Yep.
He was in Fargo once, I think, when he was running for president.
Okay.
And he was in Bismarck one time to address the American Indian Conference. And there is a video that we have linked to on the website.
Okay.
Where he was speaking in Bismarck.
Yep. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, of course, Dave and I last week were over at Drone Focus in Fargo, North Dakota. What was your take of the entire event, Dave?
We talked about that a little bit, comparing it to the year before. I'm not sure. There was more audience, obviously. There was more people that attended, but they seemed to be more of a laid-back crowd.
Right. I agree with that. I think maybe, as I've heard, it's becoming a networking event. Right, so
I think so.
People maybe the audience, being in that audience, watching the different speakers or whatever, might not be as important as it used to be because they're out in the hallways most of the time, networking with
swapping business cards.
So I think that's that's what I heard mostly about it. But did you have anything major that you seen at the event that really stuck out with you this year?
I thought the MCs were amazing.
Oh, really? Anyone
boo,
Thanks
boo,
to
wow. I turned 50 Shades of Red when you say that. Yeah. Well, thank you, Dave.
I know that. Well,
no.
Yeah. I think it's always good to play off of each other, and you and Greg do a good job on that. So.
Yeah. He's still texting me because I came out on the stage after the one video, and I guess, have you ever taken a picture of a hummingbird?
Yeah, I know that.
He looked at me with these eyes like, what are you talking about?
I should have raised my hand because I did last year, and I still can't see it.
He keeps texting me this that he got some pictures over the weekend of hummingbirds and all.
Yeah. Well, I think the really cool stuff was all of the young people's drone videos.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they were outstanding.
Outstanding. The one of the time lapse of the clouds.
Yeah.
Do you remember that with the like all the mountain scenes or whatever?
Yeah.
But yet the clouds were in a time lapse.
Yeah.
How did they do that?
It was amazing.
It was amazing.
To how the technology, especially the cameras on these drones, have really gotten so much better. Yeah. But my takeaway was I hosted a luncheon,
right,
and we had the undersecretary was at the conference
of the Department of Transportation,
yep. And then his assistant was there,
Finch Fullerton.
Love
that guy.
He is just really cool guy, but just very smart. And so there was some really good takeaway from that luncheon.
You had Justin Glasser in that too, didn't you?
Yeah, our local guy talking about transportation.
I know that name.
Yes.
Yeah. So. And then we had the CEO of Appario.
Oh yeah. Dave Batchelor. Yeah.
So
wow, that's quite a panel you had.
I did. I was pretty blessed.
Yeah.
Pretty good lineup.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, after the break, everybody, we will talk about the autonomous world. There were amazing announcements last week during National Autonomous Vehicle Day, and we really want to get to that. So we'll see you on the other side of the break.
Currently, it's 71.
Follow the Guru of Geek at facebook.com/The Tech Ranch or Twitter at Guru of Geek or thetechranch.com. Here again is your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And we want to thank everybody who joins us across the country and around the world on the Blueberry Network, on the Tech Podcast Network. If it's Tech, it's here. We're also on the Roku, iTunes, TuneIn, Apple TV, and, of course, our own app, Radio Pup, as well as SuperTalk 1270.
Yay!
All kinds of places that you get to show live or in a rerun fashion, if you like. So we're talking about autonomous vehicles today and drones and all that good stuff because there were so many amazing announcements last week. In studio, Jim Walsh, producer extraordinaire, and Rockin' Dave Blair, who's fiddling with his own technology.
I'm struggling with technology here. Headphones.
I think you got it. There you go. There you go.
Okay.
So anyway, so there were some major announcements last week on Autonomous Vehicle Day. The first one that came across when we were at Drone Focus, in fact, we used Drone Focus to actually talk about Autonomous Vehicle Day. And General Motors actually stated that they were going to drop $2.5 billion into their autonomous vehicle program called Cruise. And when they made that announcement, their stock went up 11%. The single biggest day that GM has had since they emerged out of bankruptcy since in 2010. So that is pretty amazing when you think about that they had that kind of positive reception to that news. So,
way to go, National Day calendar.
Well, National Thomas Vehicle Day, but yeah, I guess we're still impacting the economy, I guess.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was a pretty major announcement, and I guess what makes it interesting is that they're talking about the potential of, it's not just the Chevy Bolt, which is their electric vehicle, that they have out there. They're talking about their SUVs, all of this stuff, and that they're going to be able to gear up for this, and they will actually have cars. They're actually putting some cars out next year. 2019, we're going to start seeing autonomous vehicles showing up.
I'm wondering what these autonomous cars are going to look like. Are they going to look radically different from regular gasoline-powered cars?
I don't think there's going to be much change right away. You might see some sensor arrays, like on the roof or whatever, or like a little bump on the roof that has the LiDAR in it.
If you think the form follows the function, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
The fact that the cars are designed around the fact that they have these big things to hold gasoline in them.
Right. I think as we move forward, though, you're going to see radical changes in the way that that our cars are going to start looking, because they're going to become more and more efficient. Just think of the Tesla truck.
Yeah.
That semi. That thing is, the wind resistance, I guess, is like 0.36. It's the most...
It's interesting you mentioned that. We had a truck blow over the other day on the interstate.
Right.
Not too far from here, from the wind and the storm.
Well, and if you think about the technology when it comes to the composite of making these vehicles and become lighter.
Right.
But as Jim just pointed out, lighter sometimes isn't better.
Yeah,
well, in that scenario,
you got to be careful about that, and especially too when crashes and stuff like that. But a lot of the nanotechnology that's going to be changing how these vehicles are made with composites and stuff like that, it's going to be interesting too.
Yep. So I think it's exciting to see that we have General Motors. Ford, of course, has also made their own announcements. They haven't been as public about what they have coming out yet. Ford has probably been the most secretive about their autonomous fleet. However, people I've talked to, the engineers I've talked to, they claim they're the most advanced. They just haven't been, bragging about it. I think what they want to do is just shock the world when they come out with their vehicles. So
make a big show out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So Waymo, which is a division of Alphabet, which is Google.
Right.
Okay, just to put everything in perspective there. They have a relationship with Fiat Chrysler. Okay. They have about 600 Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid vehicles testing right now. So they have 600 of them on the road. Thursday morning, on Autonomous Vehicle Day, Waymo announced it would use up to an additional 62,000 Pacifica vans in their fleet. And the reason that they're adding 62,000 more is because they're launching their own ride-hailing service for autonomous vehicles. And they're going to launch in Phoenix later this year.
Wow.
We're talking 2018, everybody.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to hail an autonomous vehicle
this year
to take you where you want to if you're in Phoenix. And obviously they think it's going to be so popular that they're scaling up 62,000 of these to do this. That's amazing. Think about that.
That's a big upfront investment.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
I'm kind of worried because if I hail a cab, they usually go by me. So I'm putting that guy in there. I don't know if the autonomous vehicle said, well, he looks all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess there's an app like Uber or Lyft that goes with that. So,
I'm sure that there is.
Just
You have to have some kind of profile
right.
that you have to make up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
So what do you think about that? I mean, are you going to be okay hailing a driverless vehicle? Jim, what do you think?
I would think that something like that you would want to run your tests and everything in the smaller markets where the traffic is not so intense and there is more margin for error.
So they have 600 of them that they're running right now.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that that's what they're doing.
Okay.
They must be pretty confident.
Because Phoenix is a pretty big area.
Yes.
I mean, it's a major metro area, and you must assume the traffic can be pretty nightmarish there at times.
Right.
It is.
But they're testing these 600 in California right now. I'm not sure about if it's in rural
depending
spaces
on where you,
or LA.
yeah, I was going to say where
whatever.
you are.
Right.
I mean, if it's in LA, well, LA is nuts as far as traffic is concerned.
So, and I'm guessing that a lot of it is in the LA space.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think interesting is that I don't know how many times you guys have been in cabs recently or even Ubers when you have dialogue with the driver, maybe a little bit. Sometimes you might not have dialogue because they might not speak English very well.
Right.
Well, a few weeks ago when my car broke down the last time, I took a couple of cab rides.
You did?
No problem there.
Okay.
So now, you can just jump in the cab and you don't have to worry about having a conversation with.
Well, do you enjoy that piece or
no?
Not?
I do. I kind of I usually unless I'm on my phone, I'm having a dialogue. I've met some very interesting people.
I have too, actually, in Lyfts and Ubers. Taxi cabs maybe not as much. I haven't used a lot of local taxi over the years. When you're in larger cities, most of them do not speak English, so I have that barrier. I mean, that's fine. I'm just saying I have a barrier communicating with them because I don't know their language.
It'll be interesting to find out how many jobs, again, we've talked about job losses, autonomous trucks.
Right.
Now, again, you got autonomous vehicles out there. You're putting Uber and Lyft drivers as well as taxi cab drivers out of work.
Right, right. It's not a job loss. It's a job disruption.
It is.
You have to look at it that way. There are people, obviously, that are going to be trained in how to maintain this fleet.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out in cities like New York, where there's just such a massive the cabs. I mean, there's zillions of them.
Well, there's 13,000 cabs in New York.
Okay.
Because I watched Cash Cab. And they always talk about that as well. You're hailing cabs.
I wonder how many Ubers and Lyfts they're running in New York.
Yeah,
I bet you it's a lot more than that.
They resisted it. I know that.
Huge. Yeah. The union was very resistant to it. Same in Vegas. Vegas had the same scenario that they tried to shut down the ride sharing services and were unsuccessful in that. So it's just but they're going to make it difficult, as difficult as they can. So and Phoenix. I mean, I remember this is like a year ago that. Somebody was testing something over in California, and then they decided that they didn't want the autonomous testing to go on in California. And the next day, Arizona governor reached out and said, "Just come over here. We're happy to have you."
We'll do it.
Yeah.
So and that's why Phoenix has become this hotbed now for autonomous technologies. So it's pretty interesting. So there was that going on. Also I guess we have a couple seconds left here. So on the same day, the Mandan North Business Association out of Canada announced that they have, along with the Canadian Automated Vehicles Centers of Excellence, and Dave, I know you're familiar with them.
Yep.
That's Paul Godsmark that's up there with that organization, announced that they now have a director for the country for autonomous vehicles. So they're pretty excited about that too. And so this is part of an ongoing effort on the Canadian government for them to become a world leader in this technology too.
And they've really stepped up.
They have stepped up in a huge way.
I think that they want to kind of, I don't want to say own that space, but they really want to be recognized as the government that really takes that seriously.
Yeah,
and they actually look at it as a way to kind of, maybe open their ports up a little bit more. They've lost some business to their ports recently because it's not economically viable to do a lot of trucking up that way. But if they can get those costs down a little bit more, it might open up the Midwest, especially North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, those states to start moving things more to the ports in Canada,
right?
And because it just makes economic sense to do that. So that's what their long-term goal is as far as autonomous vehicles go, especially with autonomous trucking.
Exactly. So, exactly. So I think you're going to see more and more of that probably happening in Canada, and it seems like their regulations probably aren't as stringent as ours. Although I think you're going to see us relaxing some of that too. As we talked to Finch a little bit about that, they're all open for new things that
right,
are happening.
Right. It's a matter of safety, right? I mean, as long as the technology can be safe, Yeah,
well, it's interesting because Canada, people in this country assume that Canada is some kind of socialist democracy, but aside from things like the nationalized health care, Canada, in a lot of ways, is very laissez-faire.
That's true.
They're in a lot of areas, they're a lot less regulated than we are here.
Right, right. I know our governor, during his talk at Drone Focus, talked about how we have zero tolerance for deaths in the skyways, right? And we seem to have the same tolerance for deaths with automated vehicles, right? But yet we kill 100 people a day in our country with regular vehicles.
Yeah.
Why is it that we have tolerance for that? I'm just a question I'm throwing out there. After the break, we'll get into that a little bit, along with the new FBI warning on a new virus that's come out. So you want to stay tuned for that as well.
Currently, it's 71.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on SuperTalk 1270.
We're back to the Tech Ranch. Stream this program now at supertalk1270.com. Here is your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
So we just posed this question. How much tolerance do you have for fatalities in the air? So Dave, are you okay with family or friends dying while they're flying?
It depends on who they are.
Yeah.
No, that's not fair. I think we're always concerned about deaths, and some of these are out of our control.
Right, but let's just stay on the air thing for
right.
just a second.
I know that.
So,
no, that's what I mean.
So I mean, do you have any tolerance at all for somebody dying while they're in the air? I mean, of a friend or a family member or whatever.
I guess that's a hard question, but that again, some of that stuff just it's going to happen,
right?
And I hope that my loved ones or myself are not in that situation. But
so, do you remember the accident about 2 or 3 months ago with I think it was going into Hawaii, wasn't it? Where they had an engine failure and a piece of it actually broke off, went through a window on the airplane, and killed one passenger on the airplane. Do you remember this?
That was Southwest, wasn't it?
I'm not sure what airline it was.
Well, there was the one in Philadelphia. I think the one in Philadelphia, the woman was actually sucked out of the window.
Right. So that is the first fatality we've had on an airline in 9 years in this country. 9 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's move to cars, Jim. I mean, are you? So we get this all the time.
Oh, I think of it. I think of it when I was taking the motorcycle safety course. They kind of hammered away at that.
Right.
The fact that if you're on a motorcycle, statistically, you're a lot more vulnerable.
Oh, you are.
Than somebody in a car.
Absolutely. So we have about 40,000 people a year that die in traffic accidents in this country, and a lot more than that are injured, some of them very seriously. I mean, they never recover from the injuries they have in automobile.
Well, every time you get out of bed, you're rolling the dice.
Right.
You're not going to fall down and break your neck.
That's correct.
Not making a joke here.
But, why is it that we're tolerant of the mayhem that occurs on our roadways? But yet when we are trying to... And I find, and I'm just bringing this up. So I find it interesting that when we suggest that autonomous vehicles could actually change this significantly, the first thing that I hear from a lot of people is that they'll drive themselves better than any computer could ever do this. And even in Drone Focus, I asked this question. I asked how many people would rather drive themselves and then be in an autonomous vehicle. And it was about a 50-50 split. And these are people who are kind of in this industry, right? And they just feel they don't trust the technology. But yet we trust the technology when it comes to airplanes. So why is that? I just don't understand this.
I think that, we assume that airplanes are going to be a lot safer. I mean, we've got pilots that fly all the time.
Yeah.
And the other
you
thing
don't
is
even
that
know how little they actually fly, Dave.
Well, I know that, but I think the other thing we have to look at is, how many airplanes are on the air versus how many cars are on the road, and you're going to have, if there was that many airplanes in the skies as many cars on the road, do you think we'd have more?
Well, of course we would probably have more.
Right.
But I would be willing to bet, though, that, you know, you take anything over the last 9 years, there hasn't been a fatality in 9 years, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care how, if you match the numbers up, you know, in some type of fractional form, right? Saying that, all right, we have 30,000 flights a year in a day in this country.
But people ride in cars a lot more than they fly in planes.
I understand, but if you take a fraction of that and figure that out, you're still going to have a couple, 3 people a day that die in cars.
And don't you think it has a lot to do with technology? The planes are talking to each other; they're being monitored all the time. They know the airspace, they know what's going on. So I know where you're going.
That's
you know,
exactly where I'm going.
Is that where we need to be at with autonomous vehicles? I agree 100%.
Yeah. But it's interesting that, you know, I think we're kind of at that crossroads where people, it goes back to the horse and buggy days and cars coming out. There was this huge fracture. There were communities that almost went to war on this. I mean, you know, people who believed that their horses, you know, would always outperform the horseless carriage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, vandalism, warring resulted. I mean, you'd have gang fights that would come about. And usually it was the city versus the country. You know, the city folks tended to adapt a little bit quicker. The ranchers and the farmers out there didn't adapt quite as quickly. Although it's in reverse now. The farmers and the ranchers are adapting to autonomous technology like you wouldn't believe. So it's interesting how all that goes too. But I just find it fascinating that we're in the same space again. And the promise of, I mean, is it just because we've had so many failures personally with technology? You know, like when you're working on your computer and a virus hits it or something like that, you just think that that's going to happen to your car as well?
It's a good question.
Well,
I don't know.
I think our whole society is that it's not going to happen to me.
Right.
You know, and you know, and then when it does, you're going, wow, you look at things a lot differently, don't you?
Right. But I mean, the same capability is there for a hacker to take over an airplane.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, because, and I think the one thing that people understand is that a computer is not a closed system. You and I can put any type of software that we want to. We get it pristine, or, well, as pristine as as the manufacturer gives it to us, and then you and I start adding stuff to it, and then we get emails, and they got viruses in it, and we go there and do all this stuff.
Yep.
If we didn't do the things that we did to our computers, we probably wouldn't have the kind of issues that we have, right? When you're in a car or you're in an airplane, it's a closed system. You're not allowed to do these type of things to it, you know. So I think in that regard, it makes it a lot safer. You know, I'm just throwing my own 2 cents into this, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, I love to drive.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever give up driving, but I certainly see the convenience. I mean, when I'm going to Minneapolis, and if I can put it in autonomous mode and not have to worry about my safety and the safety of others while I text and drive or text and work and do that type of thing, I think there's a big advantage to that.
Well, too many times I think we get caught up, too, when we're driving is not focusing on the road. Sometimes there might be a distraction. You know, you're looking at something,
or you're
texting. A sunset, you know, or any type of storm coming. I was the other night when I was coming back from Fargo. It was awesome, all the lightning going on, you know, and I probably wasn't paying the close attention as I should have been driving. Yeah,
where the car, the only job it has is to concentrate on what job is at hand.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a debate for years.
Well, you remember when AAA came out with their survey,
right?
About how many drivers think that they're good drivers, Jim?
I would assume most of them do.
Yeah, 77%.
Right.
I was going to say 80%.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, if that was true, then we'd have a lot less accidents. Right.
I think everybody laughed when they seen that statistic too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, most people are going to say that they're a pretty good driver.
Yeah,
exactly.
But the interesting thing, remember when they had the accident in Phoenix and a lady was killed? That was Tesla, wasn't it?
It wasn't Tesla. It was an Uber. Vehicle that was in autonomous mode.
And so they did a statistic. They did a survey after that. AAA was talking to what's his name from Fargo with AAA.
Oh, Gene Ladouceur.
And he said they did a survey right after that, and 10% more were very uncomfortable. And these were the millennials now dropped their average down that maybe look at things a little differently.
Yep.
Back to something you said a minute ago, Marlo. You were talking about the fact that these driverless cars and these electronic cars are going to be closed systems.
Right.
But are they necessarily? Because if you take that automobile in for service, you must assume that some guy's going to be plugging stuff into
That's
it.
correct,
And who
yes.
knows where, what kind of stuff he's got on his system that came from somewhere else.
And you're right about that. It's close to a certain level, but the airport would be, or the airplane would be the same thing. The mechanic hooks electronics up to the airplane as well. Yeah. So, there's some semblance of a closed system. It's probably going to be, there are just more people involved in automobiles because there are more of them.
Right.
We're going to have mechanics in every state or every city in the country. Yeah. And in fact, that part of it is going to become even more critical because the car is going to say, I'm due for an oil change. I'll see you later, Jim, because I'm going to get my oil change now, right? So the thing is that you won't be able to ignore these things because maintenance of autonomous vehicles it'll be just like at the level that we have to maintain our aircraft, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why, people sign off on this stuff and everything else, and I think that's the level we're going to get at with our autonomous fleet. Is that, the mechanics are going to have to be certified. And this is what I'm talking about, the job creation piece. We're going to have a lot more mechanics out there. Have to have.
Well, and you think about it, too, the combustion engine going to the electric engine then, too. So you better hone your skills. If you're going to be a mechanic, start looking at the electric car.
That's true.
And what's that going to mean out there? Because GM's announced how many more electric cars they're going to have. And you go back to your question, Jim, about gas tanks, it might be obsolete, somewhat then too. But then you got batteries, that's a whole new thing to what's going to happen
whole
there.
Different motor and everything,
Exactly.
So, that's a very valid point. Yeah, GM, I think it was a few months ago, announced they're making 5 million electric vehicles.
Right.
So, that's interesting too.
How is the cost on them? How affordable are they
right now, if you get an electric vehicle over a gas combustion engine, it's about $10,000 more. And it's difficult. I penciled it out one time. It's difficult to make up that price difference. Yeah. I think if you keep the car for 150,000 miles, you get pretty close. Because 10,000, even at $4 a gallon, $10,000 of fuel is still 2,500 gallons. And 2,500 gallons at 30 miles a gallon or whatever we're getting right now, that's 75,000 miles right there. And that's at $4 a gallon.
So we're not at the point yet where economically it's really viable.
Right.
To go out and buy, unless you're Ed Bigley Jr. and you're buying it just to prove a point.
Right. And you still have to factor in the fact that electricity isn't free.
Right.
You have to plug this into your house and you will pay for that electricity, so.
And that'll be a question we need to address sometime about that. And
absolutely.
About that fee that comes with electricity.
We haven't even got to the Russian hacker thing yet, have we?
No.
We got to do that.
After the break, everybody, I promise we are going to that because you need to know about this.
Currently, it's 74.
On Twitter, Facebook, online, and YouTube. SuperTalk1270.com.
Follow the Guru of Geek everywhere he goes. Post your comments or questions at thetechranch.com. Once again, your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
The FBI recently recommended rebooting home and small office routers that could have been infected with disruptive malware alleged by sophisticated state-backed Russian hackers. An estimated 500,000 routers and network-attached storage devices have been infected.
So what specifically do we have to do now?
Well, they just say right now that you can just reboot it.
Just turn it off and turn it on again.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't get rid of the infection, and that's why I thought we'd talk a little bit more about this, right? So the first question that I've been getting about this is that so first of all, I should back up. So the FBI acknowledges that this step will only temporarily disrupt the malware. It doesn't get rid of it. It just disrupts it, okay? So some of the questions about the situation, how do you tell if your router's infected? Not your computer now. This is the router. So this is the router. If you subscribe to a service or, like your ISP, you got a router in your house that
which we do.
Which
we have Wi-Fi in the house.
If you got an internet connection, you got a router. Somehow or another, you got a router in there, right? So How do you tell if your router's infected? You basically can't as of this time. So the routers aren't very consumer friendly. And most people lack the ability to get deep enough inside the device to tell if it's infected.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
I wouldn't know the first thing about it.
Most people do not.
Yeah. Right.
So the average person is not going to be able to tell. If my router was infected and I reboot, is it safe? No, that is not the case. Turning an infected router off and on again only removes some of the malware, such as elements that could snoop on your internet activity or even overwrite the basic code of your router.
Wow.
Thus bricking it. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, bricking it, but it means basically that it's useless. It's very popular. It's a very popular term with with smartphones. You can rewrite the firmware that's on your Android, and then make it do more things for you.
Yeah.
But you risk the if you don't do it right, you can brick your phone. Yeah. Basically, it's like a brick that you can just throw into the water because once it's bricked, you can't do anything about it. So
all it does is sit there and take up space.
Does nothing, takes up space.
Well,
so
it's interesting. Why wouldn't a service like I have Mid-Continent be aware of this?
They are aware of this.
And can they do anything at all?
But you have to think about your ISPs, right? They're in the business of providing you internet service, right? So they'll partner with companies. They're not the hardware manufacturer here. They just partnered with a hardware manufacturer, and they probably put that router in if you pay for that service to put them in. I mean, I have their modem. I don't have their router. You can do multiple. There's modems and routers connected and into one piece now, like an all-in-one unit, like a printer and scanner and fax machine. But yeah, I mean it's the manufacturer that has a challenge there. So if you turn it off and back on, it could possibly So the issue is that this firmware snoops, or the malware snoops. So it's looking for your passwords and it's looking for all that other stuff that you're throwing through your connection, right? It sends it back to the Russian hackers, and they will sell that information to the highest bidder. And then you're going to have some identity theft issues or whatever's going to go on with that, right? So that's what's going to happen with this. So first of all, you should just turn it off and back on. That's the first line of defense right now. You need to do this because it disrupts that. If you have it going on, it disrupts it. So let's just start right there. You got to do that to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But the core infection persists on reboot, and there's no simple way to delete it. That's the challenge here. Is there's no simple way to delete this thing. The good news is last week the FBI seized the command and control server that sends instructions to the infected routers, disrupting the zombie network that could be used to mount a crippling internet-based attack. So the FBI now has control of the server that was controlling the malware.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, all right. So the FBI has control of that. However, the bad news is that the persistent malware is in listening mode awaiting instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that these hackers could set up another server someplace and tell it to do the things that it wants to do. So all the cards are still on the table. So this is really a big challenge.
It's a real cat and mouse game.
It really is. Yeah. So why can't I completely remove the malware from my router? Okay, that's a valid question, right?
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Have you ever written code to your router before, Jim?
I would have no idea. I couldn't do it at gunpoint.
I talk to my router every once in a while.
You bang it on the thing. Why aren't you working, right? So for starter, routers are difficult for ordinary users to fiddle with. I mean, it's basically just like you guys were talking about. They have publicly known vulnerabilities that aren't easy for the average users to patch, and typically aren't equipped with antivirus software packages or intrusion protection systems. That said, if you update the router's firmware to the latest version, something you can often do via the router's phone app or web interface, you should. It may not fix the problem, but it's possible that it will. And I'm guessing that since this is out now, most of the routers who have who will be sending out, the manufacturers will be sending out updates to their firmware to fix this problem. Yeah. That would be my guess. But again, have you ever updated the firmware to your router, Jim?
No.
Dave?
Nope.
All right. I do it occasionally, but it is something that the average person does not do. You don't even you didn't even know that you could do this until right now, right?
I had no idea.
Yes.
Nope.
Yeah. So this is the thing. So you want to check that out and see, if you can do that. So which devices are affected, and where can I learn more? So Cisco identified these companies as makers of affected devices. So Linksys, I bet you somebody in this room has a Linksys. I know I do.
Okay.
Microtik, it's Mikrotik. Netgear, TP-Link, and QNAP. Those are the brands that have been affected by this malware.
Well, I'm going to go and look tonight
Okay,
and find out what brand I got.
So again,
Off the top of your head, do we know what Mid-Continent uses?
I don't know what they
set up,
use for their router.
Maybe they use more than one. I don't know.
They may have. They may. So, and we're not trying to throw Mid-Continent under the bus.
No,
This
not
has
at all.
nothing to do with them. It could be
everybody's
vulnerable. Quest.
There.
It could be if you have whatever service you're using. I know we're only picking on Mid-Continent because they're their local. They're the largest local service provider that we have. In your neck of the woods, it might be somebody else. You know, so you just need to look at this. So, so basically, you should probably update the firmware on your router. If you don't know how to do it, find somebody who can.
Yeah.
That's the best advice I can give you.
Update the firmware on the router. And how do we do that? Do we
Marlo, can you come to my house and do that?
I'm sure my email has just expanded greatly now since people know that I can do this.
Alice is going to love us.
Yeah. But that's the thing, So find somebody who can. They'll need to get access to your router to do this. It's not difficult to do. There's just a couple steps. You need to download the firmware. Some of the newer routers actually do it automatically. You can go in there and say, it'll show you that there's a firmware update. You can click, I want to update the firmware, and it'll do this. But this, again, isn't something that's popping up on your computer screen. Okay. You actually have to type in the IP address of your router from your computer so that you can access the router, and that's when it's going to start telling you these things.
Yeah.
So it's really a challenge for most people to do this.
How did FBI find this out? I'm kind of curious always about.
I'm not sure.
My guess is they're not going to tell us a lot because they don't want the bad guys to know how they do that.
Right.
That's probably true.
They probably were able to track nefarious activity across the web somehow or another and notice that a lot of it was going to a particular server, which is why they were able to track down that server location. Right. So that, to me, is probably what they did. But this is kind of scary because I really don't know how a person protects yourself against this.
Yeah.
Because most people think that the first line of defense that they have is their router. And now that they're able to actually infect our routers, it's just interesting to me. So this, again, just like you update your computer, it's so important to update your computer with the latest stuff all the time. It's obviously important to now update your router with the latest firmware or what have you. So yeah, it's kind of scary stuff.
So that's the very least you should do is
update your router. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, gentlemen, it's a very interesting show today.
Oh, yeah. We were kind of all over the board, but always great here being in the studio, and you get 3 opinions instead of just one.
Absolutely. We didn't get to the autonomous delivery vehicles. We'll try to do that next week.
Yeah, that's good.
Because this is very, very interesting as well. Just give you a little teaser for next week. So have a great week, everybody.
God bless.
Thank you.